Hello, my name is Michelle Holt, and my vulnerable population is ADD and ADHD, and I'll talk about some environmental and cultural factors that contribute to this certain disease today. So let's get started. Um, in, in the media, ADHD or ADD is portrayed as a myth, fraud, or benign condition where teachers often are too strict towards these individuals, or perhaps too much television. But the individuals are often portrayed as being scatterbrained, impulsive, unable to concentrate on one thing for a long time. And as you see this comic to the side, it provides an example of what we portray ADHD or ADD persons to exhibit. For family support, children who are diagnosed with ADD or ADHD have been seen to have a poor quality of life and family interactions, and they also may have some behavioral conduct problems as well. So ways that we can strategically help these individuals cope with these certain attributes is build a family dynamic around educating them and implementing a structure to their behavior. For instance, establish good rewards, provide positive attention, give effective instructions, use consistent consequences, and then praise your child for efforts. All these things, of course, every child is different, but incorporating these things that will help them overcome and control these behaviors. I love this picture. It reminds me, so my brother has ADHD, so it just reminds me of him and I growing up. So peer interactions or sibling interactions often are portrayed due to lack of behavioral control when emotions are evoked. They have a slow return to baseline of emotions and often inflexible. They're just overcome with emotions and behavior tendencies that it's hard for them to focus and control on that as well. In the environment's cyclical nature, research has shown that genes are a big factor in determining who develops ADHD, which we are composed of a lot of genes, so that would make sense as to how that is so. Socioeconomic status, they're often seen as to have poor academic achievements, the use of illegal substances, psychological maladjustment, and driving violations. And then peer interactions are low because they have self-esteem issues, they're depressed, they're antisocial behaviors, isolation, and anxiety. And the biggest reason for this is because they're seen as different or find themselves portrayed as different. When interviewing my brother, he had mentioned that was a huge factor in how he saw himself as how others saw him at such a young age. In the legal and political system, ADHD comorbidities with oppositional defiant disorder or conduct disorders are linked to juvenile delinquency, so aggressive personalities, high felony rates, and antisocial behaviors. Barriers to this in the culture. They often have learning disabilities. They can't focus. They have difficulty with the social aspect. They can't communicate fully their emotions. They have anxiety, depression, bipolar, Tourette's, often resort to substance abuse, bedwetting problems, and sleep disorders. And as I was looking at age groups, it was around 4th grade to 7th grade, I believe, was around where these kids would start seeing these disabilities be portrayed. Internationally, ADHD has been the most commonly diagnosed childhood disorder in the USA since the 1960s. They're seen as imperfect or seen as hyperactive, have inattention and impulsivity. They kind of just act and don't think before they act. ADHD is an essential disorder and has been aggressively promoted by psychiatrists and some pharmaceutical companies, with some countries embracing the disorder and others coming close to rejecting it. So a lot of countries have sought a lot of profit because they have done research and have made pharmaceutical medications to help cope and diminish those symptoms that are relayed in ADHD or ADD individuals. It's taken up in Canada, the UK, Scandinavia, India, and China, where that's tracing its acceptance or rejection. Socioeconomic status. So children living below 2 times the poverty level have been shown to have an increased risk. So 6.2 times more likely, depending on their socioeconomic status, to have ADHD compared to children of parents with a history of ADHD with a high socioeconomic status. I found that quite interesting, that related to the status in our community is affected by the diagnoses of ADHD or the history of people being diagnosed with ADHD. For cost-wise, the average cost per person is $14,576, and then yearly that is about $42.5 billion for an American. And then monthly medications are anywhere from $15 to $600. Race and ethnicity. Children are 4 times more at risk in an English-speaking household than any other household. And then males are linked to be 3 times at greater risk than females. And a lot of that is how males and females express, and in a future slide we'll talk about how they express their emotions with gender wise. In religion, research finds that compared to the rest of the population, Christians are less likely to view ADHD as a real disease and to believe children with ADHD should be treated with medication. And then results also demonstrate that evangelicals are more likely to think doctors are over-medicating. So there's this debate going around of no, medication is the route to go, and others are saying no, you're over-medicating your child, you just need to use non-pharmaceutical methods to prevent further problems for this individual. It has been shown that church attendance is unrelated to beliefs about ADHD treatment, but it is positively associated with thinking ADHD is a real disease. So here's that slide I was talking about of the differences between boys and girls and how they show their symptoms. So women are more, or girls are more internal. They are withdrawn. They have low self-esteem and anxiety. They have impairment in attention. They have inattentiveness or daydream. They tease, they taunt, or name call. Whereas boys, they're impulsive. They act out. They're hyperactive. They run. They hit. They can't focus. They're aggressive. So I thought that was true in a way of how gender plays a vital role in affecting us if we're ADD or ADHD. In geographical location, in the western states, we actually are shown to have the lowest rates of ADHD. So Nevada is the lowest at 4.2, New Jersey is 5.5, Colorado, Utah is at 5.8. So on the higher end of the western states. But if you look over at the midwestern states in like Kentucky and Arkansas, it's 14.8% of the people who have ADHD rates at a higher level than us over here in the western states. Biases. So there's implicit and explicit, and I feel like some of these could go either way. So we have perceptions of people who um, we kind of social distance ourselves from people who are perceived to be different, or um, it talked about how we link or stereotype people with mental disorders in association with ADD and ADHD because they don't act normal in public. They're over the top and they come across as dangerous. Um, it often talked about how teachers and parents evaluate or coincide their success or abilities of their children negatively when they are actually diagnosed with ADHD or ADD. Um, Often they're seen as unteachable and hopeless. Um, in the explicit, um, like we see them as they can't focus, they're distracted, they're disorganized, they forget, they're absent-minded, they're hyperactive, um, and they can't sit still. I remember watching my brother growing up, and I remember thinking, can't you sit still just for a minute? And it was at the beginning stages, and we were just learning about the diagnosis of this disease. Um, and so it was hard to help him and see him struggle. Um, and internationally, I couldn't find much, but I saw a lot about um, the findings showed that underdiagnosis and undertreatment of African Americans and Latino children are opposed to overdiagnosis or overtreatment of white children. Um, so it showed lower rates of detection among the minority groups or racial groups, such as Hispanics, Asians, Native Americans, and African Americans. And that's my slide for you. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much.